Leave Wonderful alone. That's right, I said it. Leave him alone. It's not his fault. Look, is Wonderful as good of an AWPer as Shiro or Zaiwu or even Torji might be better than him? No. I'll admit that. But is he the reason that Na'Vi are losing, getting blown out by Spirit, getting blown out by Eternal Fire, losing to Saw, nearly losing to Tyler? No, he's not the reason for that. Look, he can be better, and we're going to discuss that, but it's not all his fault. Look, I chose a game here where he really kind of is a little bit the problem. I think one of the things that's great about Wonderful, by the way, is that he's actually a really solid rifler. He's one of those players where you put a rifle in his hand, and I think he performs just as well as most of the other riflers on the team. But when he has the AWP in hand, recently he's been not inconsistent. He's been consistently missing way too often. I would say that back before this most recent Blast event, I think this was kind of like a really down event for him. I think he was actually kind of having reasonable performances recently, and I didn't see him kind of missing easy shots quite as often. He does seem like someone that struggles. Mainly, I feel like he struggles more so in the playoffs than anything. It feels like when he plays against top teams, he just misses shots that I don't see him miss quite as often earlier on in events, even against strong teams in those events. But the unfortunate reality is there are way more problems with Na'Vi at the moment than just Wonderful. When I see like post-game threads that are like, oh, Na'Vi just lost to Saw, it's Wonderful's fault. It's like, no, there's more things going wrong. And I think what it comes down to, Wonderful's a little bit inconsistent. I think Ime's a little bit inconsistent still. He's been getting a lot better. We've had some games where Bit has really struggled. JL has always been kind of hit and miss, and you just don't have the stars aligning the way they did last year. Now, again, we're looking at this game. Wonderful. Look, you could replace him with Simple and it wouldn't be a bad idea. I mean, let's be completely reasonable here. But the problem with the replace Wonderful crowd, I think really comes down to the idea of who are you going to replace him with? Because there's not a lot of great AWPers out there, and Wonderful might not be a Shiro level AWPer, but he's definitely better than that lower tier of AWPer that you would have to dip down into to pick him up. Especially because, I mean, the most obvious choice other than Wonderful would actually be like Jambo, who actually just got picked up onto Fnatic, and past that there's really not any great options that are going to perform better than Wonderful does. And looking at this game, you know, he's already been in the wrong position a couple of times, but that's not his fault. That's kind of a strategic thing. This is just kind of the way things are, right? You can't be gambling the right side. That's just kind of almost an unrelated point. Look, Wonderful has to hit that shot. He has to hit that. He takes another one. I think he actually might even land that one, but it's through the door. He gets spammed through a smoke. It's not the end of the world. Maybe he should have hit one of those shots. Probably he should have, but at the same time, Zontix is in tunnel, just spams him straight through a smoke. There's not much he can really do. But he does manage to get himself an AWP in the very following round, and it's, you know, he should be able to find at least some success. They actually went for a timeout in the meantime. One of the things to keep in mind, though, is Spirit them and Vitality are kind of miles ahead of everyone else when it comes to Dust 2. And I think one of the key problems when it comes to Na'Vi isn't even necessarily that they're playing all that much different, although this is going to be a really bad whiff from Wonderful. However, is that not on? I'm not one of those guys that's like, he got CS2'd, but is that not on? He missed. Okay. It was close. It was close. He missed. He sucks. But one of the problems that really is the case for Na'Vi is they had this unbeatable Mirage for a lot of last year. It was genuinely just an incredible Mirage. By the way, this is a really tough angle to be firing from. Like, maybe you should hit not the first one, that's kind of a tough one, but this one, I mean, the first one's probably easier. Maybe you should be hitting that one. You know, Na'Vi had like an unbeatable Mirage. Everyone copied their Mirage, learned from it, picked up all the things they were doing, and now, although their Mirage is still quite strong, they clearly are not completely comfortable picking it, especially because they know that teams are going to be prepared for them, and they just don't feel like, I'm guessing, but based on the way they're acting, I can only guess they don't feel like their Mirage is at anywhere near the level that it was previously, and so they don't have that kind of free map win, right? Last year it was kind of like you get them on Mirage and all you have to do is win 1 out of 2 maps in a series. Now they actually have to really understand what the peasants feel like when they have to win 2 contested maps throughout a series. My lord, that must be challenging. But actually, Wonderful, It's problematic. It's tough with Wonderful because, again, he's a good rifler, which means that he can kind of maintain stats sometimes while, like in this game, I mean, his stats aren't good in this game. He drops, what, a 0.7 rating-wise, but he's like the second highest player on the team. But you do need your opper to just hit shots when he has the op in hand. And that last round, when they go up short, he misses that shot. If he hits that shot, maybe they don't hold anyways, but maybe they go 2 for 1, right? Maybe he gets that first kill onto Donk, his teammate moves, like adjusts, and gets a kill before getting traded. That's kind of what you're looking for when you get triple swinged like that. And he misses the shot, they go 0 for 1, round implodes, right? He's got a few kills, right? And he'll get kills even when they're on, you know, bad buys. Sometimes the reason they're on a bad buy is because he missed a shot that he should be hitting, right? So statistically, it's sometimes a little bit hard to actually fully understand Wonderful's problems. You really do, especially against these top teams, need that lockdown opper that can just, you know, catch Donk as he swings around a corner. Find those openings and make it tough for the opposing team to feel confident just swinging on you all the time. And Wonderful sometimes misses out on that. Actually, shout out to Skybox Edge because I can actually now see the stats when an opper has an op. So Wonderful goes for a good amount of entries and has a 1.17 rating, which, by the way, not good. In fact, I think HLTV rating is kind of inaccurate at showing impact with riflers, but it's really good at showing impact with ops. Of course, there's more to it, but this is full buy versus full buy with op in hand. Wonderful's at a 1.17. Here's everyone else. And some of those stats might be a little bit surprising. Of course, this is only one aspect of the entire game, but it's still not a good look. The previous year as a whole, he's quite a bit better. He's having a bit of a downswing. I still don't think he's the reason they're struggling against worse teams. I really feel like he only misses out on those plays against the very best teams in the world. You put him against Mongols, he usually does well. In the group stage, almost anyone. You put him against G2, he still does well, right? It's specifically against a couple of teams. We're looking at one of those ones, right? We're looking at one of those ones because he already had one round where he kind of just didn't hit his shot. And there's actually a highlight package of this game, by the way, where it's just literally just Wonderful missing a ton of different shots. And then, you know, to make matters worse, 5v1. You're just looking for the player. It's not really a big deal for him to die there. Obviously, you want to keep 5 players alive, but it's not I don't think it's the end of the world for him to die there. They're still going to pick up the op. They're still going to win with 4 players alive. Realistically, a 1v5 is one of the easiest ways to farm a frag Shiro because they're just looking for you. Although at the same time, Shiro probably needs to make contact there, get a kill to prevent, like, sometimes when you have that much time left in the round, you need to prevent your opponents from hunting. But Navi just didn't have the money to really fully hunt there anyways. So anyways, early round, standard play. Wonderful doesn't go for a ton of opening frags, but goes for a relatively average amount on the CT side. I think he somewhat falls into, it feels like the Shiro category where he doesn't get aggressive in the mid round as much as I would like, but at the same time, if he's having troubles hitting shots, right, well, getting aggressive in the mid round is where you end up putting yourself in situations where you either hit the shot or you die, right? You end up in those situations quite often. This is one of them if that smoke hadn't landed, and that's a shot that he absolutely needs to be landing. At the same time, he does get away with it. He gets away without, almost doesn't catch Donk, but he gets away without dying, still gets himself a kill. That's still a shot he's got to be landing, though. I mean, he just has to be hitting that shot. He should be dying there. Probably at least half the time he ends up dying in that situation. But this is the Navi we know and love. They get the 1 kill. They keep everyone alive. They set up for the retake. They're going to fully set up for the retake. They're going to pop out with a flash, and with that flash, and then contact. Wonderful misses another shot. He does finally hit Shiro, but they actually win this round without losing a single player despite giving up the bomb plant. That's the Navi we know and love. That's the Navi we want to see more of. Bring us that Navi. Where's that Navi been? And it's, again, I'm not saying Shiro's been good. Okay, I even have a video saying Shiro needs to be better. Shiro, I'm not saying Wonderful's been good. I even have a video saying Wonderful needs to be better. I'm only making this because of the absolute surge of people completely convinced that every loss from Navi is like, replace Wonderful. It's like in every comment after every loss, replace Wonderful. It's Wonderful. Wonderful's the problem. Like, there's other issues with Navi, guys. Like, and Wonderful actually, I feel like he does a decent job of like keeping them in games when things are going wrong because most most other, again, said this for a third time now, most other Oppers aren't quite as good as Wonderful when he has a rifle in hand, you know? But at the same time, can you expect Na'Vi necessarily to be beating Spirit on this map? This map plays into every strength that Spirit have as a team. It's one of those maps where your T-side, on T-side, your Opper can set up. He can set up in Pit, he can set up in Fast Cat, he can set up in... There's so many angles for Shiro to set up and just wait for someone to peek into him. Even like clearing out mid and having him post on like a CT rotate. And then on CT side, there's so many just like great angles for an Opper to take a shot and fall back. This plays completely into Shiro's strengths. This plays into Donk's strengths. This plays into every strength that Spirit have as a team. And kind of, I'm not saying this isn't a really bad whiff from Wonderful. My God, that was just the whiff of the absolute century. This is one where I really, watching this live, I remember thinking, did he get CS2'd here? No, he misses, he misses. Yeah, no, he's just missing. He's just missing. That's uncharacteristic from Na'Vi, or from Wonderful, I would say. But I'm not saying Dust 2 isn't a tactical map at all. In fact, I really disagree with people that seem to try and suggest that, oh, Dust 2, it's not a tactical map. You know, it's a terrible map. It's just such a puggy map. I think it's actually come a long way. It's become quite the good map recently, but every map still has its, you know, strengths and weaknesses in terms of what teams are going to be good at it on paper. This is a map where you can clearly see how this plays into Spirit's strengths. It's a little tough for Na'Vi to get into it, but at the same time, Wonderful hits a couple extra shots on CT side. Maybe they got 7 rounds right now. But okay. He doesn't actually get himself an op for the majority of this half. So how is Magic's 2 and 10? Oh my God, what the hell? Okay, he doesn't get himself an op for the majority of this half because T-side, a lot of the time you're looking at, you're willing to stick to a rifle until you have enough of a lead where the op isn't gonna really hurt you, or your opponents maybe buy an op because you know eventually they're gonna buy an op. If you can win that round, then you don't have to actually buy one yourself. You just keep the economy advantage throughout. And obviously Wonderful is quite good with the rifle, so they're fairly comfortable leaving him on that weapon. Did he like intentionally do it? That must have been like a change up, right? He had the Galil and then he drops it and buys a scout afterwards because nobody has a Galil now, right? But whatever. Scouting when your opponents have full guns is not always the most successful of endeavors, but if you know they don't have an op, the scout is actually, and Dust 2 is a pretty reasonable map for the scout, not only because of the double doors, but because there's so many angles where you can take a shot and fall back pretty effectively. If you don't think they have an op, it's actually a pretty good map to buy a scout on, but this is about the worst situation to have the scout on. Running up to A site, just pull your Glock out at this point. Just pull the Glock out at that point. If you're gonna be, if you have any inkling that could be a potential reality where you have to make your way up short like that, just don't buy a scout. That is such a, oh God, that is, I'd rather have a Deagle. Rather have a P250. But he bought the scout again. This time he's actually in a, in a position where it could potentially be successful. That's a really solid play, by the way, that a few teams have been making recently. In fact, if you remember, if anyone actually heard this, I remember hearing this myself. I was watching it live. I think it was kind of a popular listen-in clip where Kerrigan says to the rest of his team, he says, like, don't change the plan without saying something, or something along those lines. Like, I made the call, you have to follow it. Otherwise, tell me if you want to change the call. It was actually on that exact strat, or, well, a variant of it, where you're going for the heavy mid to B play. Or actually, no, it was a slightly different variant, because I think that was 2 players going outside mid to B. I think the phase variant was you sent 1 player mid to B, and it was more of a fake for the pop in through tunnels, but you did have a player throwing that flash, and it was Brokey, I think, was throwing that flash. But anyways, aggressive play from Spirit to begin with, but they fall back quite quickly, and I believe Wonderful actually heard that, so at least they've got a little bit of information to work with. 12-6 scoreline, they probably shouldn't be winning this game. I mean, realistically, you've just gotten yourself too far behind too quickly, lost both pistols, lost the conversions, didn't manage to make that like round 3 break actually hold. You're gonna have a tough time winning in general when those are the circumstances, when you have 2 teams that are like relatively closely matched. But the play up short from the majority of Na'Vi, and Wonderful's just here to play as the lurker, which could look really bad. I mean, this would be a great cherry on top of an unfortunate game for Wonderful if that cat play just got absolutely shut down and then Wonderful was just sitting in mid in like a 1v4. But luckily, that's actually not the case. I'm wondering what the idea behind this is, because I don't think they expected to run into 3 players on A. I feel like they did not expect to run into 3 players on A, or they would have played that slightly differently, because didn't they lose a player early? They just ran up A and won the 3v3 on A site. Isn't that what just happened? In any case, Wonderful finally gets the op. He lines up for the play where he's trying to catch someone that jumps up onto plat. Actually, a relatively effective play, I feel like, but sometimes it can be a little telegraphed when nothing else is happening on the map at all. However, I think Na'Vi actually did have some good utility thrown. I've seen a team I'm not going to name names. I've seen a team that kind of telegraphed that they were going for that play. This one looked pretty much normal. But once the smoke goes down, it becomes a lot more uncomfortable for the opper. Someone could be actually backside plat. If you're learning CS and somehow you stumbled on this video, that's a main reason for you to smoke off B tunnels, for you to smoke off long doors, or a variety of many different spots on many different maps. The point isn't that you need to delay a rush. The point being that once the smoke is down, they can be on either side, and then it's very hard for someone to try and like lurk into you and actually win a gunfight because there's so many angles they have to worry about. Whatever. Wonderful. Now that the game's completely lost and they have no chance and it's 2v5, he's actually going to hit a couple of really wicked shots. First one, bang. Second one, nice. Drops. Third one, I think he might even be on him there, but he's still inaccurate from the movement. Is he? Is he? Is he? Wonderful and flicking off of people. Name a more iconic duo. Jeez. This would have been such an unbelievable clutch if they 2v5'd with bit 1v3. But yeah, I mean, Wonderful. What did he do in this game? He got a few kills at the end that didn't really matter. He missed a few shots that absolutely lost them rounds. But the point of this is, leave Wonderful alone, except for when they're playing Spirit or they're playing Vitality. And then I think you can say that Wonderful might not be good enough to actually consistently beat those teams. I think that's fair, but let's share the blame a little bit with Na'Vi. They're struggling. They've got issues. Other players are struggling too. It's not just Wonderful, but minus Wonderful plus Simple. I mean, maybe.